So, some of it is about time and place, which is true in your careers as employees as well, as time and place matters. All right, Lizzo flipping her hair is driving me crazy, so I'm going to start talking about Lizzo now. Okay, so we signed Lizzo in summer into fall 2015. So most people think that Lizzo appeared on the stage last year. 2015, we started talking with her, working with her. We put her in a studio in 2015. She had a couple of songs. One was Truth Hurts. They were demos. We thought they were great, but they were demos. She got into a studio because she had also met at the same time a producer, a gentleman named Ricky Reeves, who runs a company called Nice Life. She and Ricky went in the studio. They worked on a bunch. They worked the demos into better demos. And so we started talking about, okay, what's the plan with Lizzo? And hey, Ricky, let's do this together. So we're partners with Lizzo and this production company slash producer named Ricky and Nice Life. So that's 2015. 2016, all of these dates matter and it'll become clear as we go. 2016, we put out a song called Good as Hell. You know about that song, and we'll talk about that much later in the story. But we put this song out on a barbershop sequel, the Barbershop movie, which is a culturally relevant movie. It was the barbershop follow-up called The Next Cut. And we moved on. So the song was on the Barbershop soundtrack. It was all good. It came out. It got a little play, streamed a little bit. There was video, on YouTube. It was all good. Life went on. 6 months later, she was ready to put out her first EP. She had a bunch of songs that she and Ricky had worked on. She was out there building fans the way that a great artist does, creating great Instagram content, dropping things on, I was about to say YouTube community, but that didn't exist at this point. Just connecting with fans and building her story. She had 70,000 social followers at the time, which, as you know, is not a giant number in the world of a major artist. And she puts out an EP called Coconut Oil. Great musically, super cool, great first start, streams 400,000 times in the first week in the United States. Most of the data I'm going to give you is US centric for no particular reason. It was just that what I happened to pull. So she puts this out, 400,000 stream, life's good. She's awesome. We all love Lizzo. She runs up and down the hallways, makes us all smile, and everybody wants her to win. But she's one of lots and lots of artists at Atlantic Records. We're a big record label. We believe in a lot of people, but we all love Lizzo. And we just thought, like, she's super special. Someday this will be a thing. Okay. 2017, she puts out a bunch of more music, a song called Water Me, which had a little bit of success in August. She puts out a song called Truth Hurts, which you all also now know, I'm sure. First week streams are about 400,000. So if you remember on the last slide, about a year prior, we put out her EP. It streamed about the same number. So she's grown a little bit. She went from 70,000 social followers to 220,000 social followers. So she's 3 times bigger in socials than she was just a year earlier. That's only relevant in that audience matters, right? If you've got real fans and you grow those real fans into more real fans, there's more people for the party the next time you have a great song or a great, EP or album to put out. Truth Hurts comes out and it streams 446,000 times. I have a feeling that 999, that seems funky to me, but ultimately 450,000 times in the first week in the US, right? So an amazing number, fantastic. Song does well, super cool. We move on, we keep it going. It's a song in the internet that lots of people listen to. She's got 22 million streams to date across all the music she's put out, including Water Me and her EP and The Good as Hell. The Good as Hell that was on the barbershop thing, and it's all good. And we keep moving, and we're all in. We just keep building Lizzo, and we're not rushing, and we love Lizzo, and let's just keep going, right? And so that's the spirit of believe in an artist if you think you've got an artist. Some artists are all about their songs. We always knew, and Lizzo always knew, that she was a movement. She wasn't an artist. She wasn't a song. So we put out Truth Hurts. It's a great song. Nobody really knows about it. The world keeps moving on. 2018, she keeps making records with Ricky. We put out fitness, we put out boys. There's a couple other things she does. There's some covers. She's all over press. There's a VH1 thing that happens, I think, in 2018, where she's hosting stuff on VH1, which in 2020 probably wouldn't really be a story, but at the time it still was because Cardi B was still hot on VH1. And so, cool movements. She's becoming more of a presence, and we're trying to make sure that she doesn't become like a personality and a celebrity, but not the artist that she wants to become. So she keeps making songs. We keep putting them out. We keep working them. We keep taking them to DSPs. We keep getting playlisting. We do all kinds of marketing. It's all fun and good. Life moves on. Nobody's talking about Truth Hurts and Good as Hell anymore. And we move on. Okay, October of 2018. This phenomenon happens called Bye Bitch. Lizzo starts playing the flute. This is not a marketing stunt. She plays the flute. Who knew? It's amazing. Bye Bitch explodes on the internet. She creates a flute and shoot challenge. There's a video. It goes viral. It's the first time anything from Lizzo gets outside of the tiny little world of the people that care. So maybe there's people watching this stream that knew because you guys pay attention. You're watching what's happening on the viral playlist and whatnot. But most people had no idea who Lizzo was. I mean, most people, outside of anybody that reads the music blogs, people had no idea who Lizzo was. My wife barely knew, and she lives in the same house as me. So it explodes. The press starts talking about her in a different way. Again, we're sitting there thinking, this is amazing, but we don't want her to just be a celebrity. But, oh, this is amazing. And what cool content. And she plays the flute. And this is the thing. So life goes on. So that's October of 2018. 3 years after we signed her. So we're finally in 2019. We're almost 4 years on. We have an album. We're super excited. We've heard, I don't know, maybe half the album so far. They're working on it. It's amazing. And so the way you tee up an album, because we always knew we wanted to put out an album with Lizzo, and she always wanted to make an album, right? Some artists in 2020 focus mostly on songs. Many still want to put out a body of work. So Lizzo wants to put out an album. We picked the first single. The first single is called Juice. We're super excited. We love the song. It's super tempo. It was actually a pretty deep discussion around what the first song had been, because we love the album and we weren't really sure what the first single should be. And picking the single only matters. It still feels like, to me, a dated concept as someone who is far more of what's next, how does the music industry need to evolve, what do we need to do different. For a while, it seemed crazy to me that in 2019 at this point, we're calling singles. But the reality of it is, calling a single is just, where are we going to spend most of our money? Where are we going to spend the most on music videos? What kind of content are we going to make? We need to help the DSPs and the radio programmers and the publicists and the TV show bookers focus. So we need to call a single. So we call the single Juice. Juice is an amazing video. It's a moment. Let me culturally, what's happening in the world is everything that's terrible and great about Me Too. Right? The world is now in an uproar, and lots of people are getting outed as being, terrible, and women are getting to stand up and be very vocal about the way the world should be. And Lizzo's there talking about body positivity. And here we come with Juice. And none of this is marketing. All of this is Lizzo's vision of the world and what people should be allowed to do and how fans should feel comfortable and upbeat and happy. And actually, I jumped over one thing. Maybe Brianna was there, I can't remember. But at Warner Music's holiday party at the end of 2018, Lizzo performed at her holiday party because she wanted to. And the entire company was on the dance floor. And every single person that left the party said, "Oh my God, I love Lizzo." And most people at Warner Music Group probably had no idea who she was. So we put out Juice, and it streams 1.1 million times in the first week. A massive number, considering just a year ago we were putting out music in bundles like an EP that was streaming in total 500,000 times. So her socials are growing, She's now at 800,000 social followers, which to you probably feels like linear growth. To us, actually, if I had the graph in here, the graph goes like this. It started out, it bubbled, it went 70, 80, 90, 110, 150, 200. And then over a couple of months, it just started exploding because people actually started discovering her. So now she's at 810,000 or 11,000 social followers in total across her catalog. She's got 82 million streams. That number matters because it means that every single day people are discovering her, and they're all, because none of these songs have been a massive hit. They're going through her whole catalog and listening to her. So every time she finds a new fan, they're leaning in, which is really cool. 811,000 social followers is the very bottom of the hockey stick that I talked about. So January is the beginning of the album setup, right? So then about a month later, we drop a new song, Cause I Love You, and she puts up and so that's an instant grad for the album, right? The second song that we put out. The focus is still on Juice. Cause I Love You starts streaming well, does 1.6 million streams, 500,000 more than the song that we said was our single. That's, a little bit of a head scratcher, but we're all like, all right, it's cool. Juice is, we have to keep working it. It's all good. Stay focused on Juice. But there's something here to Cause I Love You. That's interesting. She puts up a tour. The tour sells out around the country in 40 minutes, including 2 nights at Terminal 5. That's thousands and thousands and thousands of tickets in New York City. So Terminal 5, if I remember correctly, holds, I think, 5,500 people. So that's, 10 or 11,000 tickets in New York City from a woman, to go watch a woman that most people didn't actually know who she was just a year before. T5 is a pretty big moment, especially when you can sell out 2 nights in a row, because it means that the next tour, you're coming back, and the next step up has got to be something like Radio City. So T5, 2 nights, 40 minutes, the whole tour sells out. We're walking around the office, high-fiving each other. This is amazing. She crosses 1 million social followers. Holy mackerel, super cool. I can't believe I just said holy mackerel. 100 million streams crossed. Amazing. Everything feels right for this album that we're going to put out. The flute comes back. So this is an amazing marketing event. So when you ask yourself, like, is marketing something that we create, or is marketing something that we jump on top of and amplify? This is the best kind of marketing, which is the artist is an artist. She leans in. Some other artist, in this example, Ron Burgundy, which is ridiculous, also leans in. We make some phone calls to Ron Burgundy's people, right? That sounds ridiculous to say Ron Burgundy, but you get the idea. And we connect a lot of dots. So all we did was try to amplify this amazing thing that was happening on Twitter, where Ron Burgundy and Lizzo were having a flute battle, and it was incredible, and it went massively viral, and everybody's talking about Lizzo. And this is a month before the album's supposed to come out, and there was no plan for this. We just jumped in, and so the magic of this moment is that a marketer on our team saw this happening and started making incessant phone calls to make sure that we could capture the energy of it and help to make sure that every single person that we could find knew about it, including late night people, blogs, the publicity people, our partners at the DSPs. Like, this was a moment that everybody said, oh wait, when's that Lizzo album coming again? So we used the moment. It was amazing. We did not create it. It wasn't falsified. It wasn't an idea we had in a marketing room. It was just something we rolled with because it was amazing and natural and beautiful. So across 2019, a couple other things that happened, right? One is in March, she puts out a record with Missy Elliott. Lizzo loves Missy. Missy loves Lizzo. There's a lot of crossover in sort of what they stand for in the world. Tempo comes out. It's got 2.2 million streams in the first week, which is 1 million more than the Juice record we just talked about it a minute ago. It's not a single. We're just gonna see how it goes. Missy leans in. Missy signed to Atlantic as well. She leans in. They make this incredible video. If you haven't watched the Tempo video, you should watch it. Hopefully you can see the GIF going on in the background. It's phenomenal. But Tempo is just a record. So Juice is the focus. Cause I Love You is a bigger not focus, and then Tempo's an even bigger not focus. So we're all sitting around scratching our heads trying to figure out like what's going on with this project, because in the world that we normally live in, right, over the last 70 years, you build up songs and your biggest song is the one you're calling your single. So we put out an album in September. It's called Cause I Love You as well. It debuts at number 2. It's massive. It streams 25 million times the first week for the album. Again, she's not a global superstar. She's not even a US superstar. She's a pretty popular artist for people that care about music, who pay attention to the celebrity world and the press world and the blog world and like cool, different sounding music. The average American has no idea who this is, what this album is. They're not paying attention to it. It's not really cutting through the noise. Juice is, on the radio, sort of, kind of, and she's up to 1.5 million social followers and 140 million streams in the US. So we're going along, we're chugging along. We think we're building an artist. We're super proud of where we are. Lizzo's super happy. She's getting every look in the music industry. Everybody's paying attention, but she's one of a whole lot of artists that are sort of bubbling out there. All right, April 2019. So now I'm going to take you back a little bit. So at the same time, our sync team is out there talking to everybody they can about Lizzo, because we care about Lizzo, the artist, not just about the album or any given song. And one of the songs that one of the Netflix people gravitate towards is Truth Hurts, which we put out, if you look at the timeline on the left, back in the third quarter of 2017. So we're trying to work an album in April that we just put out, and we get a call from our sync team and they say, hey, Netflix has this great show. They're super excited about it. It's all called Someone Great. It's amazing. And they want to sync Truth Hurts. And we're like, cool. What about Juice or Cause I Love You or any of the other songs on the album? No. They want to use Truth Hurts. Okay, cool. Fine. It's all good. We believe in Lizzo. It doesn't really matter. It's 2019. We need to think about the world differently. Let's keep going. So, and by the way, all syncs are good for artists and it's all good and we keep on moving. So Truth Hurts gets a sync. We stay focused. We're driving an album. We're telling DSPs, i.e. Spotify and Apple and Amazon and YouTube and everybody else, we're super excited about the album and about Juice and about Cause I Love You. And she cracks 1 million followers on Instagram alone. She's got 1.5 million social followers. Her email list is growing. It's at 50,000 people, which means 50,000 people want to hear from her directly, in a totally other way. That's an opportunity to, get into the merch business and whatnot. All cool. Then Truth Hurts takes off on TikTok, right? And we didn't do this. This just happened. Kids start doing a DNA test on TikTok. It explodes. Everybody starts writing about it. TikTok just coincidentally is at this massive inflection point where it's explosion growth. And so there's so many more people on TikTok than there were even 9 months before. And at that perfect moment, Truth Hurts is like one of the biggest challenges on the platform. So we're talking the TikTok on the phone, our contacts over there, trying to figure out how to make sure we amplify this. All the while, this song is not on our album, and it came out in 2017. So we're now in the background, the digital marketing people are driving a song that the rest of the company actually wants to not be the song, because we're all trying to stay focused on the single that we thought was the single. So now we have a decision to make in the big meeting room, and we have a whole conversation, and we decide that Truth Hurts is the song, and Truth Hurts is amazing, and we'll figure out what to do about the album, but we're in the Lizzo business, and why should we ever ignore the data and the fans? And if the fans love Truth Hurts, then we should all be in the Truth Hurts business, because it's an amazing song and it's an amazing moment. And oh my God, the world is a complicated place in the middle of 2019. Because again, there's a lot of cultural relevance to what's happening. Harvey Weinstein's happening, like all this stuff. And Lizzo loves this song, and let's just go with it. So we just keep on rolling. So we put the album over here. We're still telling everybody about the album. We put Juice over here. We're still telling everybody about Juice. But we decide our new single to work at radio and with all partners across every single format and across the rest of the world, because we're starting to get interest from the rest of the world, is Truth Hurts. We do a bunch of remixes around the song, and it hits number one. And that week we do 21 million streams just on that song. So we went from 500,000 Coconut Oil EP total streams to 21 million streams for just a single song. And that's where the hockey stick happens. So we jump from 800,000 social followers to, in a couple of months, 7 million social followers. We don't buy social followers. We think it's a waste of money. We don't do any of that nonsense. Every one of these is some version of a real fan out there jumping in because they love Lizzo. And I say Lizzo because now we're at 800 million streams, right? It's not just this song. They use this song to get into her catalog, and they start listening to the album and the EP and the other random songs and the playlist she started curating. So we signed her in 2015. Nothing's happening. We're in 2019. It took us 4 years to get to an album. And then we go backwards and we're working a song from 2017. Totally fascinating. The conversations that had to happen to allow us to decide that we should actually embrace an old song. I will tell you that in 2010, major record labels would have never ever worked an old song ever. It would not because it was like we would do this and hold on to it. It just wouldn't have made sense. Like, you move forward, and if catalog streams, that's fantastic. That's great. Or I guess not stream, but download in 2010. In 2019, we now live in a beautiful world where we have to not be afraid of catalog streaming. And while you probably think this is normal, as recently as 2019, this was not a thing that anybody was doing. Nobody would have worked an old single. And I'm not saying that to pat ourselves on the back. I'm just saying that there were a lot of arguments that happened around whether or not we should work Truth Hurts or whether or not we should keep it moving and stay focused on the album that we built tools around, videos around. We've spent box loads of money around. Like, we're in the 'Cause I Love You album business, and this song taught us that catalog can help us drive everything else. So we work Truth Hurts, and life is good, and we're all learning as we go, and that's the beauty of the music industry. So then the second DNA test takes off. So we build this cute little Spotify thing. You'll see me pop up here in a minute, and it basically it connects you to your there I am. It connects you to Spotify, to the account, or I'm sorry, you use Spotify to connect in, and it tells you based on your listening behavior what percent of a bitch you are. I think I was something like an 85% bitch or something like that. It was super cute. This thing takes off. Usually when you build a nice little activation on Spotify, you do it because Spotify will then feature the music and maybe feature the activation as well. But this thing actually goes viral, and hundreds of thousands of people start doing this. The press starts writing about it. They start writing about the DNA test because it's clever, it's cute, it's interesting. People are doing ridiculous things with it. Memes appear. So we've got like traditional press writing about the TikTok DNA challenge as well as the DNA test on Spotify. And they're basically doing the promotion for us, which is a fascinating thing as well. I won't go through all the data, but Truth Hurts reaches almost 2.5 million streams in a single day. A couple of 100,000 people take this DNA test on Spotify in the first day. That's a gigantic number. I don't know how many of you do Spotify activations, but I'll tell you, it's not that many. Her artist profile starts growing. She reaches 1 million people, 1 million followers on Spotify. That's a massive number for the tee up for, what are we going to do next? Whole bunch of other stats. Her email address reaches a couple of 100,000. She's got 2 playlists she's running. One is a Truth Hurts playlist, which is a discography, has a couple of 100,000 followers. She's got a That Bitch playlist, which is a curated by Lizzo playlist with a couple of 100,000 followers. Again, I don't know how many artist playlists you follow, but I will tell you that most of them do not have hundreds of thousands of followers. Most of them, including from major record labels, have couple thousand, 10,000, 50,000, maybe if you're lucky. And most of the time they don't drive any streams. And Lizzo's That Bitch playlist, if we drop if we say, hey, Lizzo, check out this new Missy Elliott song, and she puts that on her playlist, we watch it help drive that song. So this is a really powerful marketing tool that we help to build with Lizzo that she curates. She goes to the radio. She reaches number one. That song Truth Hurts is number one for 7 weeks. Again, number one on the biggest pop radio chart in America for a song that came out in 2017 that just a few years ago, nobody on earth would have ever even considered working an old song. It's the number one song in the country. It's amazing. It's also a global smash. She's doing 52 million streams at peak a week. She's up to 8 million social followers. She's approaching 1 billion streams from her catalog. Most people on earth now know who Lizzo is. And we've been working there since 2015. And just maybe 9 months before this, nobody had ever heard of Lizzo before outside of the people that cared. We fast forward to 2000 and the end of 2019. We're through Truth Hurts. We're going to go back to the album. We're super excited. We're going to use all of the energy. We actually re-delivered the album to DSPs with Truth Hurts on it. So there's a deluxe version. Since you don't pay for it, it doesn't really matter, but it's on the album now. So now the version of that people are listening to includes the big song that they're all looking for, Life's Good. Now let's work the album that we had put out 6 months ago. Or instead, we could work the song that we put out in 2016 from the Barbershop soundtrack. So that's what happens. When people are digging through her catalog, the album is streaming really well. It's not like the album was a failure. It's doing phenomenally well. But Good as Hell is the standout record. So we go all the way back to 2016. We start building more videos, more tools, more lyrics videos. Ariana Grande wants to be on the record. We create a remix with Good as Hell and with Lizzo and Ariana. For the first time ever, she is streaming more outside the US by double than she's streaming in the US. So we call her now a global, maybe not superstar, but sure as hell a global phenomenon. She's over 10 million social followers. All of this happens, again, over the period of a couple of 9, 10, 12 months, as far as most people are concerned. But we had actually been building her and putting out these songs for 5 years at this point, almost. She's over 1 billion streams. We hit the fall. She gets her big heyday. She gets 8 Grammy nominations. Life's amazing. We actually a little upset she doesn't get all the Grammys. Life's okay though. Lizzo's happy. She's one of the most Grammy nominated in a single year people ever. It's amazing. She's super happy. It was an amazing campaign. We learned a ton about catalog marketing and not thinking about catalog as catalog anymore, and thinking about like all music can be flat. And that was what streaming was supposed to lead us to. But it took us 10 plus years of a streaming market before we got to a world where a single could be anything in the catalog for an artist. And really, whenever fans discover an artist, that's their moment where they find their favorite new song. So there were so many lessons that came out of this project. But I think for me, catalog was one of the biggest. The other was if you believe in an artist as an artist, you've got to stay in it a really long time. We spent years working with Bruno before he exploded on his own. We spent years and years working with Ed Sheeran before he exploded on his own. That guy toured the United States for 1.5 years before anybody was even talking about him. Like the world of a major label artist who has hopefully a long-term career should take years, because you're not trying to. Some record labels still stick a song up on the radio, they burn the song, and if the artist doesn't connect with the second song, they move on. The artist chance is over. Their career takes whatever turn it's going to take, which is why we believe in the artist development model of like, believe in an artist, remember that we're all people, remember that we're all supposed to love each other, remember that somebody like Lizzo doesn't come every day. And when you find that person, and there's many of these amazing people out there, you've got to like keep believing. And when it doesn't connect, keep believing. And when it doesn't connect, keep believing. It's magical. So the beauty of the Lizzo story is that we all believed in the beginning, and we were allowed, because our company is hopefully trying to do the right things, we were allowed to actually keep going and going and going and going. And then when the album wasn't the thing that exploded, we were allowed to take bets and go all the way backwards and do it, and then go back again and try it all over again. It's phenomenal. Okay, so what's next? So Lizzo finishes. She's the most tired lady in the world. She had every opportunity on earth. She was on every television thing. She was at the Grammys. She's like been busier than I can imagine. We sent her massive opportunities that she had to turn down that were like, hey, if Lizzo does this thing, it'll be amazing. It's only going to take her 45 minutes. She just to get on her camera on her iPhone and record it real quick. And they were like, she doesn't have 45 minutes for the next 3 weeks. So, she has had every opportunity in the world. She needed some time. She's getting some time. If you pay attention to her on Instagram, you'll see she's actually doing a lot around coronavirus stuff right now. She's like, made some videos for hospitals and things, but like getting some downtime. And then we all figure out like, how do we get her to what's next? What's the next album? What's the next album that makes her a long-term global superstar? Because she's had amazing success and nobody believes that she's a flash in the pan. Yeah, so that's my Lizzo story. I'm going to jump into the next section if that's okay, and then I'll come back to questions. Okay, so I'll try to be quick here. So I just wanted to think about, in a world of coronavirus, if I were you and I were thinking about, how is my life going to be different, and will any of this impact where my career might start out? I tried to write down some ideas and things that you need to think about, because they're the things that I spend every single day and locked in this office talking about as we try to figure out what's the new normal, what's going to be the new normal, both in June and in September and next May and 3 years from now. Like, how much of a long-term impact will this have? So just a few ideas. So we talk a ton about touring. If you plan on either being a musician or working in the touring space in any way, ranging from tour managing to musician to tour manager to agent to caterer, right? Venue operator, any of those things. We keep talking about when is touring going to be back to normal? When are people going to be? Everybody keeps thinking, well, fall, because a lot of tours have moved to the fall. But like, is that real? I don't know. I don't know when people are going to feel comfortable with being with 130 other people in Mercury Lounge, which is a tiny little club, or with 5,000 other people in Terminal 5, or 10,000 in Madison Square Garden. Like, I don't know when it is that normal will happen. And I think for people in that space, it's a really scary time. And I raise that because if you're thinking about touring, you need to take into account like hopefully it's the summer and the fall. But if it's not, where are the opportunities going to be if that's your true calling? So what are the other areas? For our touring department at Atlantic, which we actually call artist development, we talk a lot about, they're leaning into live streaming because there's not really a touring business for them to drive. So other than them helping to help reshuffle tours as they're getting set up for the, late summer and fall, they've become our live streaming department. So the digital marketers, who are more busy than they've ever been because the entirety of music has become digital marketing, not just over the last decade, but in the last, 3 weeks, the touring department has leaned in and said, we'll own live streaming and we will help to figure this out. So the questions around live streaming really become, because I think live from your couch is going to get old, right? It'll be a thing that always exists, but like, that's not going to turn into a thing. Will there be new features and functions and new formats of live streaming that help to connect the gap between now and a future world where we're all able to go back and be in the physical space and be in the same room as artists and do all those things? And so I don't know the answer to that, but I can tell you that lots of people in the live streaming platform space are trying to figure it out. They're trying to figure out, like, what are all the interactive features? What are the different kinds of formats that people might care about? Like, it can't just be the thing that we've been doing with live streaming for the last 10 years, because that didn't really connect. So I think that there's something there for people to think about. There's a lot happening in the virtual concert space. So we did a thing with a company called Wave XR, which is they build virtual worlds for touring, and they only do music. And so we did a thing with Galantis, which is a an electronic act. And Galantis did a global live stream about 6 weeks ago, coincidentally right before the quarantine started. And you should go check it out on YouTube. Galantis. It's right up on their YouTube channel, and it's cool. And they did a live stream in front of, they're an electronic artist and they're pretty big, so they tend to play festivals, so they tend to play in front of lots of people. But they performed, I think, in the first 2 days, because we rebroadcasted it so the rest of the world could tune in. And I think between the initial live stream and the rebroadcast over the first 2 days, there was something like 150 or 200,000 people watch their virtual concert live stream. And that's a massive number for live streams. Lindsey Sterling has done it. So in a totally different space, Lindsey Sterling that has the violin. There have been a bunch of artists that have tried this out, and you should go check it out, because I think that it's a fascinating thing. Art, and it's not all animated. So the artist stands in a room and they put sensors all over their body, and then the production company builds a virtual, let's say, Skrillex. So Skrillex can look like an animated Skrillex, or he can look like a monster if he wants to, and he could perform on the moon. So Skrillex is a monster on the moon, but when he's moving around and DJing, everything is actually happening in real time, and the monster is actually Skrillex in a suit. We haven't actually done it with Skrillex. He's my example. You get it. So anyway, fascinating idea. I think it's super interesting. There's a lot of like, how do you then tie in the incredible world of gaming that music hasn't done a ton with in the last 5 or 10 years? How do you tie that into the virtual concert world? Are we going to see this as additive to concerts? Is it going to be substitutional for now, and then like when concerts come, real world concerts come back, will this stuff all die off? I don't actually know, but I think it's a fascinating thing to think about. I think there's a conversation to be had around like, is $9.99 still going to be the streaming model in 3, 5, 9 years, right? Or are we going to see people like Verizon and Apple and whatnot, bundle products together? And then on top of that, how does the economy impact that, right? Because subscriber growth is still happening around the world, but if the world goes into recession, how does that impact all streaming subscription? And also, how does it impact music specifically? Does it impact music more than Netflix, less than Netflix? We shall see. And so I think that's a fascinating thing to start thinking about. Music participation is up in a way that it's never been up before. TikTok has seen more growth in the last 90 days and the last 30 days than they've probably seen ever. It's exploding. Everybody's at home. Moms are getting on TikTok. I'm doing TikToks with my kids. TikTok is a massive participation thing. And unlike other kinds of streaming, you can't do it in the background, right? Whether you're creating or just consuming, you have to do it totally lean in. Whereas on YouTube and Spotify, it can be in the background. It can be something that you can do while you're doing other things. So how does music participation and the fact that you can only do that or this impact the other streaming services? And then UGC on YouTube is up as well. So in the last 3 weeks, and Billboard wrote a whole article that you should go read about this, YouTube music consumption, like for things like music videos and whatnot, is actually up, because the music market, like the streaming music market, is actually slightly down by a couple of points. But on YouTube, it's up, which makes sense because everybody's sitting on their computers. But UGC is actually up a lot more. And so both on the consumption side as well as on the creation side. So like, what does that mean? How does that impact? Is this a blip? When we all go back to our school, job, work, the whole thing, does this go back down again? Or because so many more people have come into the funnel, and there's so many more, non-traditional, i.e. not 14, 15-year-olds on TikTok, and now there's 22-year-olds and 32-year-olds and 42-year-olds, are we actually going to see these things continue to grow even after we go back to some version of normal? Because I bet you normal is going to be abnormal for a really long time. I talked to you about Lizzo and catalog. Catalog in general is up, right? You're sitting at home, you're feeling funky. These are funky times. You want to feel some level of comfort. And for a lot of people, comfort isn't just the new record that came out. Comfort is the song that you loved last year, the song that you loved 3 years ago, the music that I grew up on when I was in college, right? A lot of my college friends are posting on Instagram and Facebook about, hey, remember, there was a post like 3 days ago about remember, what was your favorite song that you heard when you were in the quad? And so we're still talking about, music we were listening to through the windows of the quad, because it's the thing that connects us all. So like catalog is growing in more than anything else right now because people are looking for familiar times. And so as a music person, whether you're an artist and you want, like if I was an artist, I'd be thinking about what should I be covering right now, because people are looking for things that feel familiar to them. If I was a marketer, which I am, I'd be thinking about what should artists cover, but also how do I start to connect the dots between, an artist catalog, right? So say Lizzo or say Bruno Mars, and how do I make sure that people are remembering that because they love those songs? How much content is enough? We are definitely going to see in the next 3 to 6 months a completely new world of video content. I bet artists are going to lean into podcasting more, but they can't make traditional music videos because they can't go anywhere, right? At least for the next month or two. Probably, we're going to see social distancing for a lot longer than that. So, like, what is going to happen around content innovation? I think that's fascinating. I think there's going to be a lot of cool things around animation. I think artists are going to figure out how to do green screen stuff in their living room. I think as I said, the virtual concert space is ripe for the moment. And then the last thing is, I think when we thought streaming would explode, because I've been doing this a while, we thought it was going to make the world would get more global and streaming would actually over index with global artists. And so that's true. And it certainly was true for the first 5 years. What's fascinating is because of this movement in places like the United Kingdom and the US and Australia and France, where there's also this nationalism thing happening. But also maybe it's just culturally, people love to connect with music that's local. At any given moment, and this is not I've proven this out, but we've seen this enough times to believe that any given moment, 7 out of any 10 songs on a chart in a local market around the world is local. And so global music is bigger than ever and massive and connects with people around the world. But like at any given moment, if you go look at the French local chart, you'll see that there's a lot more French music on there than there is global music, right? And by global, I mean usually Anglo music, things like Lizzo and Bruno Mars and Ed Sheeran. And that's fascinating as well, because it makes you start thinking about, should artists be thinking about multilingual, right? Versions of their songs? Should you be thinking about multilingual versions of lyrics videos, which clearly has been happening for years? Should artists be thinking about recording with global artists? With local artists, that happens too. We've had a couple of artists who have recorded with, a rapper in the U.S. decided to make a song with the biggest rapper in Germany, so that we could do what we would call a remix, right? Which is not really a remix, and put it out in Germany because it'll actually resonate more with people in the local market. So I think like we all talk about how the world is getting smaller because of global, but like this local thing is even more real than we ever thought it would be. So that's fascinating to me. I think the last slide says you can ask me anything you want. I'm sorry, I closed my deck. Let me figure out how to go into AJ, how do I go into the Q&A? Let me see here. All right, I got it.
You got it?
Yeah, I got it. Okay. Let's see, we have like 7 minutes, 5 minutes.
We have plenty of time. We could actually start the panel discussion right at 3. So you could take as many questions as you want, and then let's get the other panelists on if you all are listening at home around 2:55.
Okay. So when an artist has, I'll try to pick the ones that jump out at me. When an artist has no label backing, what would you say is the best option to boost streams? It's an interesting question. So I don't tend to believe in, I'm gonna give you a roundabout answer. I don't tend to believe that we as a major record label should spend money on boosting streams inorganically, because I think that if your goal is to have a sustained career. We believe that like doing fake things, because there are plenty of stream farms in the world. I've met plenty of managers who spend money on you know, throwing, I mean, big managers with unsigned artists where they might spend 5, 10, $50,000 on a stream farm that helps to drive, you know, not necessarily fake streams on Spotify, but you know, fake streams on some platform. Or they buy followers because there's plenty of services out on the internet. If you Google it, you get a million responses. I tend to think that that stuff is a waste of money. Frankly, I think it'll help you get into a viral chart if you spend enough money. But I think that we're all supposed to be in the build an artist organically business, not about juicing a song. And so, what I would do if I had a limited amount of money and I had an unsigned artist is I would spend more of my money on content and maybe find a service that has connections with places like DSPs where they can get your song in front of the right people. I think that's a better use of money. I think like because the content side is if you can get your song to show up because somebody you find someone at one of the DSPs who falls in love with it and features it on a radio station, you know, a DSP radio station, you know, or a viral chart or a bubbling playlist or a bunch of bubbling playlists or whatever. You want to make sure that there's more than just that song. And so you want to make sure that people can go into the rabbit hole of YouTube or the rabbit hole of the little catalog and discover the artist and decide they love them. I think there are plenty of people that have a very different point of view on the answer to this question, but I think they're generally wrong because I think that we should all be in the put amazing music out in the world and then figure out how to, you know, connect it with fans and connect it with people that run big playlists and whatnot. So that, you know, so they fall in love and they become a champion and be willing to spend 5 years turning your artist into whatever version of superstar they can become rather than trying to dump a $2,000 bag of money or a $20,000 bag of money, because I just don't think that that's the business we're supposed to be in. I think we're supposed to be in the business and the art world, not just the business world. Let's see. In a recent Billboard article, you spoke about COVID-19. Oh, I love that somebody actually read that article. I hadn't read it until the other day. You mentioned a virtual notebook created by you and your team with 150 specific ideas for your artists to connect with fans during this time. Can you share some of those ideas and how they're being implemented? So we quickly said our company needs to become, you know, hundreds and hundreds of digital marketers. Every single department needs to lean in. So we built a virtual notebook, which, you know, you guys are pretty savvy. That was a word that I used with Billboard. Basically, we used OneNote, which is like Evernote, and we created a notebook that just had a ton of tabs covering everything from charity ideas, gaming ideas, fitness and wellness ideas, partner ideas. You know, what's YouTube doing to lean into live streaming? What's Spotify doing? You know, what opportunities exist with Stationhead? You know, every single startup we could think of that reached out to us, from Stationhead to Genero, which is a platform where, you know, you crowdsource music video content. And so this notebook was basically a way to amass hundreds and hundreds of ideas, which it's actually way more than 150 now because we add like 5 or 10 ideas a day. And then, so what has come out of it? So I'm trying to think of a specific example, but there's a lot. We have called artists and said, hey, we know you want to do something different than play live from your living room. Here's 5 of the ideas that our content team was kicking around. One of them was National Puppy Day was having a thing, and Matt Mason ended up Matt Mason's developing, not so developing anymore. He's actually getting to be pretty successful, but a super cool alternative artist who had just gotten a puppy. And so that was like literally from a list, and Matt Mason was already thinking about it because he knew about National Puppy Day because he had just gotten a puppy, and we did a National Puppy Day thing with Matt Mason. That's one of lots and lots of ideas. I think the most important part of that is sitting down with a pen and paper and organizing as a marketer every single idea you can think of, and then being willing to brainstorm with lots of other people and being willing to share. Like, You don't have to own your idea. Give it to other people. Somebody else will turn it into something great, and you're a part of something bigger than yourself. Let's see. How do you make sure that your marketing efforts count when everything? I just lost my question. Hold on, sorry. How do you make sure your marketing efforts count when everything on social media moves so quickly? Um, let's see. I think you embrace it. I don't think it's more complicated than so one of Atlantic's secret sauces, and I think that this, depending on your point of view on the world, I think you should think about this as you look for your first job. One of Atlantic's secret sauces is that we believe in the internet. We believe in digital marketing. We believe in creative, and we believe that to do right, the internet is, as you know, massive. We believe that you need lots and lots of people, which is why when AJ introduced me, he talked about our 50 plus people. There are still lots of record labels that have a digital marketing person or three digital marketing people. And we think that to embrace everything that is amazing about the internet and all the connection that it affords and all the creativity it affords, you need lots of people. So I think the way we do it is we just put lots of resources against it and we pay attention. And then to my example of Lizzo, where something caught fire, the flute thing, right, or the DNA test thing, you grab a moment and then you just call everybody you can think of and you email everyone. And if you're not working at a major record label, don't be afraid to just email people because most people will ignore you because they're really busy. But somebody might see your email and say, "Oh, that's really cool. Let me click on that." And maybe they feature that on your blog. And so I think it's about just allowing that doing lots of stuff is fine. Like we do so many things that don't connect. And then we look for the moments that do, and we try to, put all of our effort around the moments that do. And we're not afraid to do lots of things that don't connect. And we don't overthink it. We don't think like, man, that sucks. That one thing we did didn't work. I'm like, you've got to do 1,000 things to have one great thing connect. So for maybe both you and Lizzo, I love that Lizzo and I have commonality, where there's some points in the beginning of her career where you were a little discouraged of her progress, where any point in the beginning of her career where you could have predicted her exploding career? It's a great question. So I guess discouraged isn't the right word because I guess I think the answer is no. Like we did I know that she would become a global phenomenon? No, absolutely not. I hoped. But I hope all of our artists become global phenomenons. And certainly in the beginning, it went slower than I would have liked, or that probably anybody, including Lizzo, would have liked. But I also, even not just in hindsight, but in the moment, I think what you learn over time is that you accept that real artist development still takes time. The equivalent, 20 years ago was an artist goes out and they grind on the road playing hundreds and hundreds of shows. That still happens, but in the world of the internet, there's lots of other things they have to do. And so I think that I've learned to accept that real artist development should take a long time, and it should require, building fans by one, and it shouldn't be about spending a ton of money and hoping something's going to explode. And sometimes that happens because sometimes you catch a song and it explodes, and that's amazing. But you should actually plan for it taking a long time because I don't want any of you as you build your career, those of you that aren't artists, I don't want your career to explode either. Because the beauty of this whole thing is you get better as you get experience, you get smarter, you learn how to do things that you didn't know how to do 3 years ago. As the general manager, there are so many things I've learned over the last year that I didn't know I didn't know until I was in a new role. And so I think for artists, it's the same thing. We have had artists, without a doubt, who have been signed, who their first song out was a huge song, and then they weren't ready for the spotlight. And so, you're putting them on stages in front of so many people, and they just haven't done all the work yet because not because they didn't want to, but they wrote a hit song and the world loved the song. And so now all of a sudden they're doing interviews, but they haven't done their 10,000 hours of interviews yet. And so their interviews, less than, perfect. And so anyway, it's a hard thing to become a global superstar instantly. And so I think what I've learned is to accept that, taking a long time is actually good, not bad. And so that's Atlantic's mantra is we're not in a rush. If something takes off, cool, we'll figure out what to do with it, but we're not in a rush. What social media platform do you think is best adapted for organic artistic expression? TikTok, SoundCloud, Instagram? Yes. Yes. I think the answer is yes. I think that as an artist, you should pick what you love. And when we sign a new artist, we sit with them and we talk to them, and almost everybody asks that question. And they say, should I be everywhere? Should I just be on Instagram? Because Instagram was the thing that people talk about the most when they're coming in as a new artist. And I think the answer is like, what do you like doing? What do you not like doing? Right? Do you like TikTok or do you not like TikTok? And 3 years or 2 years ago, I actually have a musically thing that I'm drinking out of here, which was the predecessor to TikTok. Most of you probably know. And like when it was back still musically, artists didn't really want to talk about it. They didn't get it. Some artists did, but most didn't. And a couple of years on, artists have started figuring out like how to make content and engage with fans in the community on TikTok in a way that they didn't really get just a couple of years ago. So if you love TikTok, you should embrace it. And don't be corny, be who you are and be authentic. And and maybe it'll help you explode. We have an artist named Apso Facto who's got a bigger social following on TikTok than he has on Instagram because he embraced the community, not the challenges, not the he accepted that it wasn't about using the tools. It was actually about viewing TikTok as a community. So I think TikTok's a great platform. I think Instagram's a great platform. I think YouTube is a great platform that's underutilized by music-based artists. I think artists underutilize the community features and the live features. And like YouTube is massive and inherently social if you just learn how to use it. And so if an artist is really comfortable with one or two, that's where they should start. And maybe over time they need to get comfortable with more than one or two. But if they're comfortable with all of them because they're 19 years old and super fluent in the internet and all these things, then they should do all of them. I don't think there's an answer, but I also don't think they should force it. I don't think they should force their music, and I don't think they should force where they connect with fans in the beginning, and I don't think they should force content. I think they should do what makes them great, and if they don't become great, it's not a marketing problem, it's a creative problem. Like marketing is about leveraging great creative. In the fourth annual Music Business Forum, you spoke about the importance of confidence. Wow. I'm trying to remember. Okay. Has there ever been a moment early in your career where you did not capitalize on an opportunity due to a lack of confidence? That's a perfect tee up, Joshua Hernandez. Thank you very much to my not accepting twice the job at Atlantic Records. So I don't know if it was confidence, but I think in hindsight, that was definitely a part of it. So I was super comfortable at Warner. I loved being at corporate. I was working on new deals. I was working on innovation. I worked with all the labels across the globe. It was a fascinating job. And when Atlantic called and said, we want you to come help us break artists and build the future of digital marketing, I didn't know how to do that because I was a corporate guy working at corporate with a background in software and finance and management. And I loved music and I loved working with the labels, but I didn't know the first thing about how to break an artist. I didn't actually do marketing. I loved marketing, but I didn't actually do it. I understood how to help the labels do their jobs. And so I almost missed that moment. I turned it down. The CEO of Atlantic called me, Julie Greenwald, who's an amazing leader. She tried to convince me to take the gig. I ended up going out for dinner with the general manager of Atlantic at the time, who's become an amazing mentor for me. And over maybe a period of a week and a half, I changed my mind. And someone actually said to me, they gave me an amazing piece of advice, a dear friend, and he said, and actually maybe I'll give him a shout out because he's one of the co-founders of oh man, it's going to come back to me. StockX, the sneaker exchange. He actually said to me, because we worked together at the time, he said, you know, it's clear to me that you're fighting with your head and your heart, and follow your heart, man. Follow your heart. Don't follow your head. Follow your heart. And this is one of the most logical, head centric intellectual people that I know. And he told me to follow my heart. And my heart was, I want to actually be in the record business. And so I decided to take the jump to Atlantic. So I was nervous. It took me years to learn how to be a record label person. But I think eventually I made the jump. Important. Am I right? Am I out of time?
Well, there's one more, and it's from Tyreek McKenzie, and John Sinclair thinks it's a great question, so I'd like to bring it up.
Oh, I don't want to hear anything from my brother.
How do you discover talents like Lizzo and Bruno Mars? And after that, I'd like to invite the other presenters for the panel discussion.
Okay, so how do we discover talent like Lizzo and Bruno Mars? So, let's see. So for Lizzo came through. I'll just answer both of those directly because they're different. Lizzo came to us because she had become friendly with Ricky Reeves, who I mentioned. She became friends with one of the A&R people at Atlantic in LA through hanging out in the studio, because that was right. So it was the producer, one of our A&R people, and Lizzo all just became friends. And through that experience, the A&R person at Atlantic ended up hearing a bunch of the demos that Lizzo was working on. So, that was the music industry is a people-centric place. If you work in A&R, there's plenty of A&R research that happens. We have an entire research team who studies the internet to find what tracks are popping on Spotify or TikTok or YouTube or whatever. But we also have just go hang out around artists and just find people that you believe in. And because at the end of the day, it's not about a song, it's about an artist. And so the Lizzo experience came from a very, very one-on-one, person-to-person interaction. Bruno, I guess, was sort of similar, except that I said he was signed to Motown before Atlantic. And so Bruno came from, he had actually co-written a bunch or written a bunch of songs for a bunch of Atlantic artists, including he wrote one of Flo Rida's biggest hits. And so that experience came through him as a songwriter writing for Atlantic artists, and that created an introduction between Bruno, writing lots and lots of songs, and our chairman becoming friends, and Bruno just playing him music under the guise of a songwriter. And so, eventually he walked in and said, like, my deal's up at Motown. I would love to be in Atlantic. I would love to chat. The other way, I guess, the more non-traditional way that we all live in now, which everybody talks about, is the research world, where we have a whole team of people that are data centric, and they just scour the internet and they find songs or albums or artists or whatever. But at the end of the day, we don't sign someone because of a song blowing up on TikTok, because that's not what Atlantic does well. We then go hang out with Pink Sweats, is a great example, and spend tons of time with him. And we learn whether or not we're the right fit for him and he's the right fit for us. Because if you're going to invest 5 years in an artist, you want to make sure that you're like, you have a great relationship, because this is a relationship business, and we want to make sure we like each other. And ultimately, at the end of the day, he wants to make sure, Pink Sweats, that he's got champions in the building. And so it's not just about, like, we talked about the artist deal earlier in one of the presentations from Jenna. Like, it's not just about the deal, it's about the relationship, because at the end of the day, we're all in this, and the artist is in this for their life. Like, this is the career they've chosen, and we all have a responsibility to make sure that we like working together, because 5 years or 10 years is a really long time to be in business together.
Thanks so much, Paul. A digital round of applause for Paul Sinclair. I'd like to invite all of our other presenters back as soon as we get everybody into the channel. I'll start the panel discussion. This is admittedly my favorite part of the day. I'll be moderating our Q&A. So if anyone wants to jump onto Zoom, Zoom is where we moderate the Q&A. Please ask questions to a direct panelist if you'd like it to the direct panel, or have a general question, and then we can move the question around and share the wealth a little bit. So it'll be a fun experience for everybody. If you'd like to jump on Zoom, you can go ahead and do that now. And as soon as the other panelists get here, we'll get started. Oh, hi, Brianna.
Hi, Brianna.
Hey there, I'm just waiting for Trent Gray. It's our last one. Now, Albright students or whoever's on the Zoom channel, please start posing your questions for the panel discussion. I'm not going to end the queue that we created for Paul Sinclair because I think there's some are actually good to all of the panelists, but we'll get started. So if anyone would like to pose a question direct to a panelist, please say like, Trent Gray, question for you, and then ask your question. I'll give the queue about 30 seconds to start up. Ready, go.
And AJ, are you reading the queue or is there a second queue?
I'll read the queue.
Okay, thanks. Trent, we have to get you over the Warner Music Group.
Yeah, come on.
Only one out of the group.
When I started at Warner, it was just me hanging out, and then I hired a couple of Warner people over the years, and now we got a whole party going on.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see. So Matt Williamson, who's another alum. As an alumni, what advice would you give to students, alumni who have struggled to get the foot in the door opportunity, but has a strong drive, motivation, and passion for the industry? And then the second part of this is, will COVID-19 affect jobs in the industry even more? That's to the general panel. So if anyone would like to answer, really go for it. Go ahead.
I think it'd be helpful to take as much free, unpaid work as you can financially take on. A lot of times just putting yourself out there, whether it be a free unpaid internship or volunteer work, is just a good way to build your knowledge on that specific industry and gaining more experience and just networking.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I have one. I know Matt and I are, I think, friends on Facebook, and I think maybe if we fast forward a little bit beyond the internship stage to people that have been out of school a couple of years and still trying to figure out how to get in, I think that so there's a person I connected years ago with, William Patterson, as well, and there's a person that I've been talking to a lot over the years, and she is, in a really positive way, not a negative way, relentless about continuing to send me interesting things I should know about. Right, because she's like working now and can't afford to be an unpaid intern or even a paid intern at this point. And so I think she works really hard to stay connected to me, and I'm always trying to figure out how I can find the right opportunity, because she's like I said, relentless in a positive way is super important, because there's plenty of people that I think all of us have experienced where it's relentless in a negative way. So I think once you're out of school and you feel like you start the 2, 3, 4 years on, you feel like you missed your moment. You didn't miss your moment. I didn't start in the music industry. There is a way in, but you also, to sort of Jenna's point, like, you need to figure out how to keep relating the thing you're doing to the job you want. Because, you know, it is hard to look at a resume that is, you know, I sold insurance for 4 years. Okay, cool. So how does that relate to the music industry? You've got to figure out how to get your way in. And there are ways in. We all figure it out.
I think Matt actually has a second question that is good that we can pass around. So with the disruption in the industry currently going on, how can those touring professionals, i.e. tour managers, roadies, techs, rigging, be able to thrive and find work if concerts move towards a more digital platform? And this could be for anyone in the panel.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start. I've been seeing a lot of different things that the industry is doing. I think the first thing I'm seeing is just ways to earn revenue for these people to begin with. So a lot of the crew members, one big thing I'm seeing, the band The Main just made a t-shirt, and all of the funds of that shirt will go to all of their crew members. So I feel like that is a great way to start, but then it's also finding odd jobs here and there. So now the merch that they sell, the band used to ship it. Now they're having crew members that are in the area come work in the shop and do it themselves and finding roles. So I think a lot of bands are trying to help out their crew as well. And it's great to see that. And it's a way to just connect. I've been seeing a lot of that. And then also just finding jobs here and there. If they're also great at graphic design, putting together a lyric video or putting together graphics, I've seen a lot of just trying to find that freelance work in the time as well.
Anybody else want to jump in on this?
I'll hop in. One thing I'm seeing too is
I think of the Dropkick Murphys did a stream concert, which is pretty cool. And they made it a point to point out that there was the production company that was there. It was basically the whole production crew that would be there for a live event. That is something I think is becoming, you know, Paul talked about this as like an emerging opportunity where there are more of those popping up. Now that obviously doesn't accommodate for everybody in a venue, but it still does offer some opportunities where those roles are still taking place just in a virtual format.
And Trent, this one's for you from Patrick Sporer. As a box office manager for international music markets, what are the major differences between those international music markets and the US music markets that creates challenges within the field of live events and ticketing?
Yeah, so I think it's the same kind of challenges that everybody faces with international business. There's a lot of cultural differences that you just got to be aware of and are ready for. One thing that was super weird for me, but made total sense the first time it happened was these large tours, wherever they're based out of is what dictates everything. So I had a tour come through and their announce date was at 2 a.m. That's when tickets announced and went on sale because that's what was convenient for their location because that was the normal time for them. 10 a.m. or 2 a.m. my time is nowhere near 2 a.m. their time. So I was up at 2 a.m. till 3 a.m. making sure everything went well, sending out counts to the promoter and anything I needed to do. And there's also like some, I would say like unspoken norms here in the States as well. And things that come second nature to me that I often forget about. I had one who it was in a marketing in our building and I was teaching him about the building process just to explain to him how it works for me. And he's like, why does everything go on sale at 10 a.m.? I'm like, that's just it. I don't know what to tell you. Like 10 a.m. is the number. I automatically assume 10 a.m. He's like, well, it doesn't say 10 a.m. here. I'm like, yeah, but watch, I'll reach out to and I email the promoter and he was like, yeah, 10 a.m. is fine. I'm like, yeah, I'm like, there it is. So there's just kind of things you just kind of learn as you go that kind of become norms.
Great. And this one's for Jenna. What do you think is the most important part of a contract? But I want to add to that. What do you think is the most important part of your job?
Well, the most important part of my job is to make sure that we interpret the contract correctly. That's why we have to go back with business affairs often, just to make sure we have all of the terms and information how we think it's supposed to read, because I could read it differently than you could read it, and we just don't know what they were trying to get at when it was written sometimes. And the most important part of the contract, I don't know, I think it kind of depends based on the artist. Some have different sections based on touring, some have come with purchase recordings and either it's included in our agreement or not. So I don't know, that's kind of a hard one to answer.
Good. And for Brianna, you said you've been in the music scene since you were little. Did you ever want to make music, or have you been always more interested on the business side?
I have done both. I did make music. I actually was also making music right before the quarantine. I recorded a demo, nothing that I will ever release, I don't think. It's just something to do for fun. But I tried the live music scene. I booked a few shows. I opened for a couple of bands that I really loved. And yeah, other than that, I realized I wanted to be behind the scenes. I did not like being on the stage and being the center of attention. I prefer to kind of be the one selling the merch and doing the planning than the one on the stage.
And this one's from Nelson to Paul, but I think it's interesting for everyone too. What are some of the jobs and careers within a record label that aren't as widely recognized as A&R and managers? And I think this is applicable to everyone. So what are some of the jobs that are in the industry that are lesser known?
So I think there's a whole, so if you asked me this 10 years ago, I still would have said digital marketing, maybe even 5 years ago, frankly. I think that there's an entire world, obviously data is one that everyone's talking about, but people aren't really coming out of school and saying, oh my God, I want to work in data in the music industry. So I think that's an area, there's going to be a lot more stats and math people in the music industry for good reasons. And I think another area is as it all becomes more, it's all moving faster. We're putting out music faster. The internet's faster, everything's faster. I think people who care about process and operations, like we think about record labels at least as super creative and hopefully. But I think there's this entire like A&R administration. We have entire new jobs we've been making up over the last couple of years that are around release planning and product scheduling and optimizing YouTube and all these things that didn't exist, that no one really knows their jobs, that are amazing jobs and amazing ways into the music industry that relate to other industries, right? So going back to Mac's question, there are jobs out there that relate to other industries that you could, offer you a way in that aren't A&R and marketing and whatever.
Would anyone else like to add?
Yeah, sure.
We have a merchandising department that deals with a lot of the artist merch, and even just as simple as getting the UPC code correctly on an album. So that can be tied into a bunch of different industries as well.
Brianna?
And I agree with the data. I think there are so many data roles, even in every department, and that's something that a lot of people are looking at. So definitely a skill to look into. Knowing some basic SQL and knowing how to do a VLOOKUP on Excel goes a long way. And then another department that I find amazing is our merchandise department and our licensing team. They have done such cool projects. There's some Grateful Dead beer out there. There's a project, Everything is Wine, the all-time low wine. So they do different things like that. That team is awesome. It's something I knew happened in the industry, but I didn't know who was doing it and who was responsible, and seeing those deals and the different products and some of the merch that they put out, it's awesome. And I think that's something cool, that if you're interested in fashion and also the industry, it's a cool way to tie those in.
Trent, do you have anything?
Yeah, I think for me personally, ticketing, I never really thought of when it came to events. But a really cool thing too is that I'm seeing, as soon as I kind of stepped in my role, is that we manage a lot of convention spaces too. And a lot of people, like the whole event planning aspect of it, there's so much you can draw from. I mean, there's a really cool position that we've looked into, which is a like customer experience manager. And somebody who goes around with like cool cutouts of the artists during the show and lets you take pictures with them, or little things like that to make it a big experience. That is kind of a no-brainer in the convention space, to have these things for guests to do, because who so-and-so's coming to the theater, that's what you're going to see, that's the event. But no, you're there for the whole thing, the whole experience. So that's a really cool aspect, I think, not a lot of people think of when they think of live events.
And I like this question from Hansel. It's kind of interesting because we have graduates from about a 20-year period, which is an Albright question, which I'm actually really interested to hear the answer. What are some places around Albright that you've gone to, or that you would suggest going back to, that are good places to get your name in the door and to build a network for the music industry?
I could jump in real quick. I did mention it a couple times in my presentation, is the Santander Arena and Santander Performing Arts Center. They are right in your back door. There's a lot of different things you can do. There's even just part-time positions that I always kind of encourage. I know in box office, we have another college close to our theater now, where I do hire a lot of college students, because it's a great experience to come in as a ticket seller, come in as a ticket taker, and usher, something like that, just to kind of get in the door. In these small buildings, you won't believe how much you see the GM running around, or how much you actually get to talk to them. So you do kind of make a name for yourself. My assistant box office manager started out in house management part-time, and we saw something incredible in her, and now she's in a full-time role in the box office. So, just those little tiny touch points that you can get. And speaking of my experience, obviously, with the Santander Arena and Performing Arts Center.
Anybody else?
Yeah, and I think in addition to Santander, I still am keeping up with Matt from there. He's a photographer, does some awesome work. So I definitely agree with that. And I think on campus is where I've had most of my experiences. I think WXAC is definitely something to take advantage of. Be a part of it in any way that you can. There are some great skills there. I personally wasn't a part of it, and it's something I do kick myself about. I am friends with most of the people that were, so I did get to get involved in some way, and I got to go to CMJ with them. So there have been some great parts for that, but definitely take advantage of all the opportunities, be more involved with Lion Records and the different things that you can create in your own space. I think those are some of the bigger moments as well.
I think it's interesting too. Sorry, go ahead, Paul.
No, I was just gonna say, I think also think about areas that would develop skills outside of music that are related, right? So I didn't know one worked in music when I was at Albright, so I didn't actually chase any of those things, and I actually don't think the arena existed either when I was there. But I interned and then had a pseudo paid internship from a nonprofit downtown in Reading called Leadership Berks. There's a lot of leadership opportunities where so it was a leadership training for managers in the Reading area. So I met all of these management level people ranging from CEOs all the way down from all over Berks County. And I learned, it was effectively like a management crash course for me for 3 years. And I met so many contacts and I learned a lot that made my resume really stand out. Like, I think there's a lot of really interesting things that exist in the city of Reading and also the area of Berks County that if you dig a little bit, you can find that are amazing, that aren't music specific, that will make your resume radically different from other people. And, you just have to be willing to look and take a little bit of a risk that, hey, that sounds really boring, but actually it's probably not.
Great. This one's from, let's see. This is from Jack. So he's a senior and he's going to be a recent a student to be grad. What's your best advice for seniors that need to apply for jobs that are graduating May 2020 with this current COVID crisis going on? And I'd like to extend this at any grads, taking the next step after May. So what's the big piece of advice there?
Start, or should I?
Go ahead, Brianna.
So I know I went through it a little bit in my presentation, and it's important to stay active in the industry, even if it seems like it might be more difficult to find a job. I know within the industry, there are still postings, and a lot of the companies right now are adjusting to being remote and learning what they're capable of doing remotely. So I know a lot of people I've worked with never worked remotely before. If they did, it was only for a couple of days. So now learning what that flow is like, and in the weeks or months to come, however long this is, it depends on that time frame as well. But it sounds like now there might be more opportunities within those companies. It sounds like now because of it, people are looking to find more opportunities. And as Paul mentioned, if we do get more into that online space and doing more of the live streams, there will be new companies coming up out of the woodworks, and there will be some more ideas being built. So there will be more companies opening up. I know TikTok is definitely expanding. I've seen a good amount of postings from them. There's definitely some things out there and there's opportunities, but stay connected with people, network, and get into some of those Facebook groups and LinkedIn groups and look for what's available, and just try to connect with people and find those listings. And if anything, there's plenty you can do from home, depending on what you're interested in. Finding whether you start managing with artists or social media or different things, you can find that avenue and try to build a path for yourself if you're not able to find it right away.
Any other advice for seniors, soon to be graduated seniors?
Don't be afraid to reach out to your contacts. It's like age-old advice. This is not new advice, but I think it's going to be even more true for the next 2 years. When companies, especially big companies, right? Like, whether they're labels or publishers or any, AG or any of the big companies in the industry publish jobs, they get hundreds to thousands of resumes, and you have to apply that way because you have to get your resume into the system. But I also think you need to just, do the old email people that connect on LinkedIn. Jenna mentioned LinkedIn when she was speaking. Don't be discouraged if you don't get responded to, because there are, I'm sure all of us that every day that goes by, we get way more LinkedIn, messages than we could possibly handle. And so it's nothing personal, which means you need to keep doing it. And again, I mentioned being relentless, but politely relentless. Like, you just need to keep going through the grind. And I think over the next 2 years, that's going to be even more so because, as Trent mentioned, there's going to be a lot of people out of work trying to get in. But don't give up, but use your contacts. You went to a school that people love who went there. There's a lot of people that now work in the music industry that went to Albright. They know a lot of other people. We all want to help each other, right? Everyone is ultimately trying to help each other. So leverage your contacts.
Yeah, go ahead, Jenna.
Just to piggyback off of what Paul said, I've gotten so many job interviews simply from messaging recruiters on LinkedIn. If I see that they're a recruiter for a company that I'm interested in applying for or have applied for, I will message them and say, hi, I'm interested in this opportunity. Do you have someone that I can speak with directly? And oftentimes they will reply because you're making their job easier by putting a candidate in front of their face and they don't have to go searching for one.
That's great. All great advice. This one is specifically to Paul, but I think if we can expand that too, what are some ways someone can get their foot in the door as a label songwriter? So as a songwriter, how can you get your foot in the door?
This might be local to Nashville, but Nashville has tons and tons of songwriters, and we have so many different venues. And we have what is called a writer's round, which is when there's like 3 or 4 songwriters that sit in a row, and each songwriter goes down the line and talks about the story behind the song and why they wrote it, and then they'll perform the song. And I got interested in that just by going as a fan, and then I started to follow certain songwriters that I enjoyed. But oftentimes there will be industry executives at these shows just looking for the next person that they want to bring in.
Any other advice for potential songwriters?
I actually can't answer that. I think publishers are the ones that sign songwriters for the most part, and so or not, right? But I think what Janet just described exists in all the major cities, especially LA and Nashville, where it's really an in-person thing. You just need to hang time at studios and in writers rounds and all these groups and writers camps and lots of, if you follow every single publisher, not just large but small, publishers hold writers camps all the time, and often they're willing to have in, you know, unsigned, unknown, anything writers. And so just figure out how to keep submitting to those kinds of things and you can find an in. Clearly a major publisher looks for people that have actually written a whole bunch of songs.
This next one's actually from Emily Denny. I think it's interesting. So I don't know if the panelists know, we actually have a new partnership, a pretty phenomenal partnership with Carnegie Mellon University that offers all the Albright graduates an extended scholarship, a partner scholarship to attend their MEAM program, the Master of Entertainment Industry Management program. So her question is, would you recommend pursuing a graduate program for entertainment industry since the music world crosses over with a lot of other industries, or a graduate program in general, so like an MBA or a specific entertainment industry studies program, or no graduate degree at all?
For me, I opted not to go to a graduate program, and I just did 3 online certifications in the specific industries that I was interested in. I just finished one on music law and ethics, and then I did another one on marketing. And I just felt like for me, that was best. But I do know of people that did go for a master's in entertainment studies, and they work with me now. I think it just kind of depends on how much you want to grow your education.
Other insights?
Yeah, I agree to that here on my end. I did the same thing. I decided not to go in for any further education. And, you know, my reasoning behind that is, you know, oftentimes when you can gain the experience, a lot of people are looking for either the education or relative experience. So if you do get the opportunity, like I've been fortunately lucky to get in my foot in the door to gain that experience, that will work for you as well. But that being said, pursuing higher education is by no means a bad thing at all. And it does make you extremely more marketable to have that, especially specialized expertise. And I mean, it gives you more, since the industry is so woven into other things as well, it does give you more marketability for other opportunities that you can gain experience at this other company and then hop into an industry job.
This next one's interesting. It comes from Gianni, who's an incoming student next year, so high school coming into Albright. So if you could bring yourself back to that perspective, it might have been a time ago. It's difficult to walk back that far, but what is a good way for someone who is a beginner in the music business with not much experience to get involved and become active in the industry? So incoming to Albright, before that, how can you get active in the industry? And Brianna, you kind of have an interesting
Yeah, I started. So some tips that I have for you are street teaming. A lot of labels still have college reps. Warner has a great one, Warner U. I'm very close with the girl who runs it. She is awesome. They get to go to shows and they help promote the artists, and it's really awesome. So that could be a great way to get your foot in the door. I highly suggest that. And then also something like this, attending the Music Business Forum before you even start is an awesome way. Connecting with current students and also just connecting with other people in the industry or that are on that same level as you, whether it's people that are going into college and comparing your experiences on where you're both going and what you plan on doing, and kind of discovering from there.
Anybody have any other insight? High school coming into Albright College.
Maybe Trent could go further into this, but even just getting a part-time job at a venue. I briefly worked at one and it was great. You can meet so many different people just coming in and out of the box office, ushering, working in the artist merch. There's so many different things that you can do, even just part-time.
Yeah,
I think-
fully echo that.
One other non-music specific thing, and I was just thinking about the fact that my brother's also on this live stream, who also works in entertainment, and I think we would agree on this, which is, connect with all of your professors, not just the music wins, all of them, because at the end of the day, if the music industry is about, we all love to work with interesting people because it's also the arts. I think that connecting with, really deeply with the professors that you resonate with, right? Whether it's your lit professor, your art history professor, like that stuff will matter 5 years into your career when you're standing around events, parties, conference rooms, teeing up a meeting, and everyone else around you is super interesting because they care about the arts, they care about literature, they care about art history. Like, it is an arts business, and so they care about music and the history of music, not just the business of music. And so I think going in on day one, trying to make sure that you're connecting with the roundness of the Albright experience is super important. Because at the end of it, like, I still talk to a bunch of college professors from Albright in history, from my English professors, because we just connected while I was there. And I think that stuff is far more important than people allow for, especially when you're 18 and starting your college career and thinking that you want to work in a very specific field.
I think this is actually one that goes along with that. So can you speak to the soft skills that you've acquired through your Albright education and the value of those skills? Maybe name a couple and say the value in your current jobs.
I think I'll start.
Where?
Time management, definitely a big one. Being able to handle multiple things at once is great as well. So I have about 6 huge projects due within the next 3 weeks, and figuring out which one's the top priority and which one to focus on first. How to delegate that, all of that, it comes from the time management that I learned from balancing 2 different student organizations along with my coursework and working at the admission office. Definitely something, as I said before, writing an email, my English class helped me a lot. Just email etiquette in general. I remember working with one of my professors on that, and having correct grammar in an email really goes a long way. Another thing that I didn't expect to need as much was my Spanish classes. I had just had a call with Warner Spain, and there were a couple of words here and there that I did need to know. And something that it's awesome to have some other languages and just know some terms here and there. And I think those are some of the main ones, but there's some every day that I realize.
Anything to add, panelists?
I think just being in the Albright class sizes where they are so small, it does force you to participate more and not just hide in the background, which I find I bring into meetings. Like, I don't just sit there and listen, I actually contribute and participate.
I would say relationship building is huge. You've kind of heard all of us talk about it. Like, the relationships are such a huge part of the industry. And having that time, Albright being a smaller campus, you do get to know everybody. You get to know how to deal with a lot of different personalities. You do get to learn how to just deal with people in general. And that is a huge part of the industry. Also, I think too, it might be a little more oddball, but I really shout out Matt Fotis's improv class all the time. improv was huge for me, and you use that so much in your life, just that mode of thinking of what is my character doing and how are they going to get there, what's the motivations. It's a really cool thing. If you don't do improv with Matt, I would definitely recommend it because it's a cool, fun way to get your mind to think differently. And that's something I think about a lot, of just basic improv skills that help me out professionally, which is weird to say, but.
This one is from Matt Zimmerman. So to get into the music industry, is it smarter to go and live in a major city, whether it be through an internship or an actual job, or is it smarter to stay local and build your connections in that network?
I would say where the opportunity is where you should go. Being hungry is a huge part of it. For me personally, I did stay. I went to Albright because I felt it was the best fit for me. I stayed locally in Reading at the Santander Arena Performing Arts Center, and an opportunity popped up in Richmond, Virginia. It was 4 hours away, and I said, "Yeah, why not?" And I drove down here. I think you can research a little bit and figure out where the opportunities are, and just don't say no. Take the experience you can get. And be flexible, because that is a huge part of just being able to move in the industry.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I think living.
Well, you can go first, Brianna.
So living in New York, I kind of lucked out. I'm an hour and a half out of the city, so I was able to commute, and at first it was a 2.5 hour commute, so it wasn't ideal, but I did it because I wanted to work in the industry, and I was just really excited to have that opportunity. So do what you think works best for you. If you're finding all these opportunities and every job that you're interested in is in New York, I would apply first, and if you get it, move to New York if that's something that works for you. A lot of my friends started their careers surprisingly in Chicago. There are about 4 people that I've worked with in the past couple of years that are from around the Chicago area, that they were working, they had different jobs, whether it was in media or marketing, and they finally were like, you know what, we want to move to New York and get that job in the music industry and really dive into it. So you'll find what works best for you and whatever you feel the most comfortable with and what you think is the best move for your career. It's all depends on the person. If you don't think you could handle New York lifestyle, I'm not the biggest fan of New York City, but luckily I live in the suburbs, so I don't have to deal with it much. But it's what works best for you and what you'll find is a fit for you.
For me, I was going on a lot of job interviews in New York, and it was actually very stressful, and I felt like I wouldn't want to live or work there. And like Trent said, I got the opportunity to move to Nashville. Yes, it was for an unpaid internship, and I recognize most people probably can't do that, but luckily I had family that I could live with while I did get that experience, and it ended up working out for me. But I did have to work like 2, 3, sometimes 4 jobs at the same time just to be able to keep myself afloat. But I felt like for me, it was worth it in the long run if you put the time and the work into it.
Mm-hmm. This one's for Paul. If you can go back to 2015, what would you and or your team do differently, if anything, to make Truth Hurts or Good as Hell as popular then as it is now?
Interesting. I guess the only thing I can think of, because I honestly don't think we would change any of the story, because I think, music also resonates people at a time and a place. And I think the time and the place for Truth Hurts and Good as Hell was a couple years after the songs were written, right? Because I think that culturally it became so much more relevant a few years later, which is one of the reasons why it resonated. I guess if there's something I would change, it wouldn't be 2015. It would be that, gee, it would have been nice to have the foresight to include those songs on the album so that the entire body of work received a lot more attention instead of playing this weird game where we were going all over the place. But I think beyond that, I think we all need to recognize that like great songs, are great for the moment they're in, and sometimes they're great forever, but they mean the most to people who are in that moment where they resonated the most, right? So like, I remember Nirvana from a certain time because of where I was in my life. And while I'm sure Brianna thinks Nirvana is amazing, I hope, her experience around Nirvana is very different than I was because of where I was in my life. And I was a high school kid and I was angry and all the things that Nirvana represented. So I think Truth Hurts and Good as Hell sort of represent that as well. It just happens to be a much tighter timeline.
Mm-hmm. And this is kind of a follow-up from Emily Denny. So now, after the marketing and promotion you did with Lizzo, do you do the same thing with new up-and-coming artists? So how has the Lizzo experience changed maybe some of your approaches to new up-and-coming artists, if anything?
Yeah, I think I talked a lot about it, but I think that catalog thing is far more impactful than I even let on. Like I could probably count 25 records now than in the last year or year and a half, we have either reignited or put marketing spend around. And some of them where we're not really going to revisit, like Jess Glynn has a song called Hold My Hand that just exploded online over the coronavirus thing. And, it went from selling virtually zero iTunes singles up to thousands a week, and the streams have doubled and but that's a song that we worked a couple of years ago. So that one becomes like, well, so what do we do to support that song in the moment that it's in? And Jess loves this song and it's great. And then over here, there's probably 20 or 25 songs that we've decided were singles a couple of years later, all in the last year, just because of the nature of the world and how it works now. So that was a massive takeaway. And so when we put out music from artists now, we think about that. Like we think we love this song, but if it's not connecting, maybe we don't need to be afraid that it's not connecting right now. A song that comes to mind is like Oliver Tree's Alien Boy has sort of had these ups and downs, but never really exploded. I'm convinced that someday, maybe because of this stream right here, someday that song will be a massive single. But who knows, right? And so like, we're not afraid of that anymore. We just allow that like the thing works differently. It's more of a spiral now than a linear line. I think there's a lot of other things like that. One of the questions someone asked about Lizzo was like, how do we relate the artist embracing their ownness, like the flute moment or Lizzo's body positivity? And I think same deal. I think Lizzo changed the game for a lot of people because she opened up a world where people are allowed to be whoever they are. And so hopefully that continues. And so when we talk to new artists and sign new artists, we think about that. We think about like, you know what, the box doesn't have to be a rectangle and the box can be a polygon and it's all good. And so while maybe that was true 5 or 10 or 20 years ago too, because music has always been about pushing boundaries, I think Lizzo reminds us all that that's a thing.
I think this is I'm going to combine two questions. One from Andrew. So what's your favorite thing to do outside of work? And then what up and coming artists are you listening to now? And this is for everybody.
I enjoy a lot of hiking, which I currently can't do at the moment because all of our state parks are closed. I volunteer still at the Country Music Hall of Fame every Saturday, which is really enjoyable. I usher in our auditorium and I seat people for our songwriter sessions, and then I help facilitate the meet and greets. So that's just a fun way to meet a lot of people and see some music. And I like to cook and I listen to a lot of podcasts. That's about it.
Who else? Brianna, what do you like to do outside of work and up and coming artists?
Sorry, I couldn't hear. So for me, I'll start with the up and coming artist. Youngblood is the artist that is probably my favorite of the moment. He is really killing this quarantine time as well. I think he's been doing really well with that. I saw him at first, I didn't really get the hype. And I was like, okay, I think I'm a little too old. I don't know if this is for me. And then I saw him live 2 times in, I think, 2 or 3 days. And after that, it was like, okay, I'm a fangirl here. Like I went from that passive fan to that extreme fan that would like buy the tickets, go to the show, pretty much every like label and marketing team's dream. I just did that like that. So he was that artist. And then what I do outside of work, lots of concerts still, lots of reality television. If anyone needs to talk about The Bachelor or Love Island at all, I'm your girl. And then also a lot of shopping at Target. And then some interesting things. I do like to travel as well and see some of my friends. I have friends all over, so definitely trying to see them more.
Cool. Trent or Paul?
Yeah, I'll jump in here. Right now, I know it's kind of weird. I'm kind of going through, I don't want to say my backlog of albums, but I'm listening to stuff I haven't listened to in a really long time, which it's always great to re-enjoy something. It is funny. I did not know in full what Paul's presentation was going to be on. And while I was making myself lunch, I was listening to the Lizzo album. And then to come on and see it here was pretty cool. But yeah, some of the ones I'm going through is like I'm going through the districts because I love the districts. I was actually listening to some Nathaniel Rateliff and the Night Sweats. Now he did just come out with an album in 2020, which is a totally different shakeup and is really cool. But there's a lot of other different stuff. I kind of go back and forth too. I've been listening to the Baby a lot. I don't know if my girlfriend's enjoying it as much as I am, but there's some different things that pop up. As far as recreational stuff goes, I'm a big gamer. Me and my brother will play video games together. I get killed in Fortnite a lot. It doesn't mean I'm good. It just means I play a lot and get destroyed by 10-year-olds. It's amazing. And I have a saltwater aquarium that I'm super into, corals and fish. I love taking care of that. So that's been really great during the downtime. And currently my cat is taking a nap by me. So giving him pets is a lot of my downtime as well.
And Paul?
Yeah, I'll build on that. So like Trent, I'm actually using this time at home to go through. So there's two things. One, I'm listening to new music that we haven't put out yet, so I won't talk about that. But that's actually amazing because instead of listening it to work, I get to like sit with proper speakers at home in my basement instead of in an office. So that's great. And I'm excited about that. But I'm also using the time to go through, like I'm doing a history of Def Jam and I'm going like backwards in time and just listening to the earliest, late 70s, early 80s, mid 80s, late 80s, everything from like, DMX. And it's just been amazing to go and do a history run of hip hop. So that's one of my COVID-19 upsides, I suppose. And then the other upside is recreationally. So I have two kids that are almost 11 and 12. And so I'm participating and fascinated in watching their viewing habits and TikToking and all this stuff to see like what's really happening in the world, because we sit around and talk about, hey, what are music fans doing? And like I'm experiencing it in real time every single moment of the day right now. And then I'm also a runner, as you know, AJ, because we follow each other on Strava. And I actually missed part of this morning's presentation because I was damn sure not going to not get a run in before I joined this thing because I thought you might actually ask me about it. So I'm a long-term runner, and I bring that one up because it's one of those like, hey, in life, is there a bleed between your outside of work life and your inside of work life? And one of the things that I take away from running is this need to like do relentless forward, progress. And so running for me is that way to totally detach from the world and escape, but also learn the lesson of like never, ever, ever give up. And so I'm a big like out and back runner. I run out so that I have no choice but to get home eventually. And it's a pretty good lesson for work as well.
I'm going to grab my run later, so you'll see me on Strava in a couple of hours.
Yeah, we'll see.
The next one, I'm going to combine actually a couple of questions. So for the introverts, right? There's a lot of introverted individuals in the music industry studies program. Is this field based around extroverts? And if it's not, how do the introverts get their foot in the door? And what advice can you give them?
I'll start. I think you probably think I'm an extrovert. I'm probably is it introverted extrovert? I'm an extroverted introvert. I like to shut down. I have a need to shut down, but I also over a period of many years of working in the music industry have learned to like become much more open. But one of the people on my team that I've worked with for almost 12 years now is incredibly introverted. And so we've spent 10 plus years working on that together. And she'll never be an extrovert. She'll never be an introverted extrovert or whatever I just said I am. She'll always be an introvert, but we've worked on together because she's amazing. And you don't need to be an extrovert to be in the music industry. You need to learn how to adapt your style to be amazing at the way that you are. And then I think the other thing that you have to do if you're actually a real true introvert is you need to learn how to be fearless, because you're going to naturally be the quietest person in the room or one of the quietest people in the room. And so you've got to learn how to be willing to, like Jenna actually said it a few minutes ago, to just go for it, even if you're quiet, because you do have to be heard. And if you're an introvert, you probably listen a lot more. And so you're probably more right than everybody else in the room is, because you're probably processing it all. And whereas everybody else is just doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Anyone else would they like to add?
I think that was perfect.
Yeah.
Great. So we have a couple more. We have time for about 2 more questions. So with everyone indoors and COVID-19, has it changed anything about your position with like upcoming releases? I know Trent with upcoming shows. We touched on it a little bit, but do we want to go more in depth, like how this disruption in the industry has affected you guys personally?
Yeah, I could start out because COVID is terrifying to me. To be honest, the hard thing for us is being here in Virginia. Our governor did make the shelter-in-place announcement till June 10th, which is pretty far out. And June 10th is 8 Wicked shows into our 16 Wicked show run. So as soon as I saw that, my heart dropped and I started emailing away, trying to get everything squared away and set. It is hard for us because our events, our revenue base is so rooted in events. I mean, that's literally what it is. I know I said earlier, but with only 10 people being allowed to be in a group together, of course, in the state of Virginia, it's a pretty lame mosh pit for a concert. So you gotta kind of take that as it is. And we also have a responsibility to protect just the general public. I know that sounds weird, but that really is it. And from a PR standpoint, nobody wants to be the venue that someone caught a case at. Nobody wants to have that go on. But also on a personal level, I want to ensure that every patron that walks through my doors has a safe, fun, and incredible evening. And that's a part of it. There's been kind of scaling back for a lot of different venues. I am in a very fortunate position with the venue here where we haven't had to take that many drastic steps. So, at the time being, we're still in a good spot. It could get worse and hopefully it won't, but we're just pushing back all of our shows to new dates and trying to accommodate our guests on those new dates as need be.
Anybody else?
With our department, we're still trying to figure out what that means for us, just because we get agreements after the artist signs with the label. And we were actually asking the other day, like, are they still going to be signing new artists during this time? We don't know. And if they don't, then we're not going to be getting any new agreements. And if they are, then we'll get new agreements and we can continue putting them into our system. But even if we stop getting agreements, we still have work to do. It's just at a slower pace. Like, we'll still be tracking new releases and we'll still be tracking TV campaigns. We just have to alter our day-to-day a little bit.
Anybody else?
I think Jenna will still keep you plenty busy. I think so. On the release schedule side, yeah, I mean, we have every single day we have a conversation about are there songs, albums, EPs, whatever, that still make sense in this world we're living in? And the answer sometimes is yes and sometimes no, right? The material of the song might not actually work right now, right? Like what the song's about or what the music is about. Also, there are different kinds of art. There are artists where everything's primarily online and you don't need, the artist doesn't need to be out there touring with fans or doing a radio promo tour or, whatever the thing that they're great at is. And then there are artists where, right, so there's somewhere you just keep it going. And then there are plenty of things that we're saying, this doesn't make sense right now. Let's move it into the fill in the blank, June, July, September, November, because it will work best if there's a, you know, a national tour, an international tour, or something like that. So I think everything is sort of on a case by case basis right now. And then on the other side of that, because artists are all home and they're doing interesting things and making more content and going live, and we're busier than we've ever been, in spite of the fact that music is, you know, like when it comes out is a maybe right now. Although there's plenty of music coming out every Friday, there's still hundreds of thousands of new songs on Friday on Spotify and Apple every Friday. But it is sort of a fascinating thing where, you know, there are definitely projects where you're like, this needs to come out later whenever we're all back in a different place.
Yeah. And then I know I talked about how my department has two different sides. So the international music side of my department, we had a couple big shows in the US for some of our K-pop acts. So that was a bummer to see those canceled. We were having a big in-store planned as well. So we were going to have a big K-pop day where their big thing for fans is high touches. Clearly, we could not bring in a band to do a meet and greet and shake people's hands and all of that. So we had to cancel some of those. Another thing, which I know is postponed, but who knows, with Coachella, we did have two artists going to that, as well as South by Southwest. We had Nicholas Saul, who was going to perform. So we did see some big opportunities in the US canceled or moved. So that was a bit of a bummer. And then on the revenue assurance side, our department's kind of thriving through this. I wasn't sure how it was going to hit, but now it seems that a lot of different departments in the company have been reaching out. They're trying to find more ways to get revenue now that different things aren't happening. So they're looking at neighboring rights and saying, how do we increase this? How do we get that incremental revenue? So I've been working with, I believe, 6 different countries right now, or different Warner affiliates, and working on, I think the last time I checked, it was about 7 million lines of data. So I'm staying busy. So it's definitely somehow, as unfortunate as everything is, it's been really increasing the things that we're doing in my department and building that. So there have been some positives out of it.
I think can I just have one thing that AJ? You know, we talked about, because we've talked a lot about we're all feeling funky and the world's funky and who knows what the economy is and all that stuff. But I think Brianna just showed the other side of that, which is like music's still happening. The music industry has not imploded. I wish I had a wooden table instead of this plastic thing. Like,
Good for you.
Right? We're all busy. Things feel good. You know, I hope the touring market figures, you know, out a new world really, really soon, because we all have dear friends that work in that whole space, the live event space. But I think like the upside is, you know, music is in a much better place to survive the gnarliness of this, because people love what it is and need it as a part of their lives. And so I think like if I was a student right now, it's not the same sky is falling as maybe other industries that you might have otherwise gone into. Like, I actually feel incredibly optimistic about it. I just hope that a lot of the people in the more you know, concerning spaces like live events, like our friend Trent here, you know, are able to get to the other side. We all keep talking about the other side, but then in lots of parts of the business, you know, Brianna's in the side where like she's actually probably going to work 10 times harder over the next 6 months.
So I have 2 final questions. So the first one is, who or what inspired you to go into the entertainment industry?
Yeah, so I talked about this a bit in the beginning of my presentation. Live music is pretty much what did it. Like I said, my dad would get me the albums on record release day. Every Tuesday, I'd get a new record. My parents are pretty much what started it. They showed me what live music was. We had music playing. There's a local radio station, BAB. It's the classic rock station of Long Island. That was blasting every morning before I went to school. And from there, I just started going to shows and I was fascinated. The band Cute Is What We Aim For, that show kind of started it for me. I know I see Paul's face. I think I was 13. And from there, that was the first record. What?
You were 13. I worked that record.
Yep, fueled by ramen. So I went to that show. That was the first show I went to without any parents. And I got to meet the band and hang out. And I had that signed CD. And from there, I was like, this is something I need to do.
Cool. Anyone else?
I think for me, it was my brother one day told my dad he wanted to take guitar lessons, and I was like, okay, I'll try out drums. And since then, that was something I fell in love with. And then I was seeing all the bands that I was, learning their songs from, and just that atmosphere was incredible. And I found a way to see free concerts all the time for my career, which is pretty great. So that's really what pushed me into it, was just kind of getting exposed to in general and not wanting to leave that area and be a part of that live experience in some way.
For me, I just can't see myself doing anything else. I went into Albright as an undecided major because I literally had no idea what I wanted to do. And I took a music law and ethics course. I think it was like the first year seminar. I don't know if they still have that as a requirement. And after that class, I was like, oh, this is something that I want to do. But it wasn't a major, so I minored in it instead.
Paul, anything to add?
Find yourself a mentor. When I moved from to Atlantic, the woman, that was the moment for me, was the woman that I ended up, the general manager for Atlantic at the time. And I spent hours over food talking about jug bands from the 60s, because I happened to be reading a book about Electra and jug bands just coincidentally. And it was a ridiculous conversation, and probably nobody else on this call, maybe other than AJ, knows what a jug band is. But anyway, after I left that dinner, I was like, oh, so like I spent 5 years working in music, but I can just like talk about music all day with people that like jug band. Like, that's cool. And so for me, that woman became a mentor over years and years. So like, find that for yourself, because that will, that will give you the sense of satisfaction. It's like, oh, this is the right career.
So this is our final question. It's the $1 million question that we ask every single year. So you, as you are now, what is the one piece of advice that you would give to yourself as an Albright College student? This is like the be brilliant now on the spot question.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is I definitely tried very hard. I was a perfectionist. So everything I needed, all A's, I needed to be a part of everything. I needed to keep going, keep going. So I would tell myself it's all worth it. I think keep that passion, keep that drive, and remember why you're there. Remember what you're pushing for. And, when the going gets tough, the tough get going, and you just got to push through and believe in yourself. And I think I still say that to myself today. And it's something, just keep pushing and know it's all worth it. And in the end, it's all for music. And that's the biggest thing for me.
Anybody else?
I'd say kind of stay hungry and don't really say no. That did get me into some very stressful situations during my time at Albright. I was definitely stretched a little bit thin at some points. But every opportunity leads to other opportunities. And if you're just open to taking whatever comes your way, or whatever new experience you can grab, that's honestly the best thing you can do for yourself. And I think that's the biggest thing, is just stay open and stay hungry and grab as much as you can. If it doesn't seem like it's fully relevant to what you want, you can craft that experience into something that's useful for you, or get some amazing takeaway from it.
Great. Jenna, Paul?
I would say create an opportunity for yourself if it doesn't exist, if it's possible. For me, I didn't have any relative experience while I was in college at Albright, so I had to look elsewhere for that, which is why I ended up moving to Nashville, because I found an opportunity. I took it.
Paul, final words of wisdom.
So someone once said to a group of students that wasn't me, you're not signing up for a a job. You're not signing up for a career, which is sort of the mantra in the world. You're signing up for a lifestyle, and that resonated with me 20 years ago. If you most people who want to work in music don't start, especially in the industry, don't say I want to be pretty good. Like, hey, I really want to become a director of something. They want to become the next fill in the blank, you know, rising star. And so does everybody else. It's way harder than you think it is. And so be willing to accept that you're signing up for a thing that everyone has acknowledged is really, really, really hard. And there's trade-offs for that. Like you, Trent, mentioned going out to shows. That's awesome. I've been going to shows for 25 years. I'm really tired, right? Like the music industry, whether you're a musician or on the business side, is really, really, really hard if you want to be really successful. And I say that coming from the place of, I wouldn't change it any day of my life. We have the best jobs in the world. We are so lucky to be a part of artists' lives. But man, accept that like you're signing up for hard. Like you know, and start that in Albright. You're signing up for hard. And if you're not going to sign up for that, don't do it. Like there's plenty of other ways. There's plenty of easier ways to have a career.
I just have something to add. Nobody's path is the same. So please, as hard as it is, don't compare yourself to somebody else that either graduated at the same time as you or has a job that you want. You'll get there when you get there, and it'll just be that much more worth it when you finally achieve it.
Amazing. Thank you. So that concludes our 8th annual Music Business Forum. Thank you, Trent Gray, Brianna Coutinho, Jenna Olivo, and Paul Sinclair for all of your time, insight, brilliance, everything that you've done for Albright College, representing us so well in the industry. So a digital round of applause from all of our audience. Thank you, Albright College, for helping us host this event, the music department, and everybody that's been part of this. And thank you all at home for visiting us via Zoom and YouTube. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you later. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
everyone.